Thank you so much for coming today. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Awesome. So we will start because we have a lot of questions and more people come join us. But I want to thank you all for coming today, and I hope you enjoy your webinar sections, and I hope it's been helpful to help during this process of writing your dissertation and conducting your research. So my name is Michelle Angelo Rocha, and I'm a PhD candidate in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at the University of South Florida. And I'm the president of SOQM, the Student Association for Qualitative Methodologies at the University of South Florida. And we also have here Catherine Hu and Nara Baghdadi. They are also part if they want to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine, and I am a doctoral student still at the student level at the University of Florida, South Florida. I am in the Literacy Studies program.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. This is Nada Baghdadi. I'm in the Department of Technology and Education and Second Language Acquisition. And I'm still in the student level.
Soon she's going to become a candidate. So today we have two very special guests here. That's Dr. Lisa Armstrong and Dr. Jawaher Alsuntan. And I just wanted to say thank you too for taking your time to come and talk to us today. So they're going to be sharing a little bit with us their experiences conducting the research and how was the process of writing their dissertation, how was the process of making decisions about the methodology. And we read all your questions. We had around 74 questions. So that's very amazing. But I also want to make this webinar very interactive. If you have any questions, please just raise your hand so you can also have time to ask more questions. And I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, who they are, and share a little bit about the background. And after we are gonna start asking the questions, and I wanna try to make sure that we answer not with at least majority of your questions. So Lisa, Dr. Lisa, Armstrong, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Lisa Armstrong. I am a doctor. I have my doctorate in Applied Anthropology from USF with a concentration in heritage. I also earned my master's degree at USF in Africana Studies. And I have a bachelor's in psychology with a minor in women's studies. I am currently the director of community engagement for Special Angel Investments, where I work with the community to collect oral histories about African American cemeteries and help create curriculum for K through 12 surrounding those topics. And I'm also an adjunct for State College of Florida, teaching Intro to Anthropology. And I'm very happy to be here. I hope that we can help you with your questions.
Thank you. Dr. Jawaher Alsuntan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Jawaher Alsuntan. I graduated last summer from USF, so I'm newly graduate. I'm still feeling that calling me doctor is a little bit weird for me. So we could go with Jawaher. I prefer my first name. So I have a master's degree in gifted education, a bachelor in physics. And for my PhD, I was in the teacher education program, and my focus was mostly on science education as well as combining instructional technology. So I was more interested in designing games to teach science. How can we do that? Going through teacher experiences and all of that. I worked for 2.5 years as a research assistant with Dr. Alan Feldman, who is my major advisor, and I'm so grateful for all the opportunity that he gave me. I can consider myself a little bit of a qualitative researcher because of him. So that's why I'm a brief and short intro to who I am.
Thank you, thank you. And I said, like, you need to embrace this, doctor. You work so hard to get this. So, so tell me a little bit about, before we start the questions, share about your research and how, like, give us a little bit of a background about your dissertation, please.
Starting with you, Lisa, Dr. Lisa. I will impress that PhD.
Okay. Well, I'm actually newer to doctor than she is, so it's even extra awkward for me. But anyways, I'm hearing it. And well, basically, my dissertation, I'm very much a qualitative researcher, and I'm an ethnographer. So my research often deals with African American community, but I typically focus on marginalized communities and stories. And I specialize in research related to segregated spaces, segregated or racialized spaces, and I also include a Black feminist lens to my work typically, and I tend to volumize the voice of women that meet on some point of intersection with something else. So I'm dealing a lot with intersectionality in my research. And it just seems like there's so many things that I talk about, but some of the methods that I use or that I'm very familiar with using would be focus groups, group studies, oral histories, ethnographic interviews, archival research, and almost anything that falls under that, participant observation, and learning how to blend and combine those things. My dissertation research is actually a mixed method study because I conducted my research during COVID. I was afraid that I would not be able to do face-to-face interviews. And so I included a survey. The survey didn't do as well as I thought it did, but it had the potential to, but it had similar questions to the qualitative interviews. And I actually have a piece that I added. It could have been a chapter. It was a chapter, but I eventually moved it to an appendix because the collaborative ethnographic piece was much richer. And because there was not so many participants in the survey, initially they didn't recommend that I keep it as a chapter. So it's in the appendix for additional information, but that's pretty much the gist of my research.
Awesome. And you?
So for me, I would start earlier. So since I came to USF, I know what my topic will be about. I specifically select USF because they are focusing on this type of research. So it was a perfect fit for me. However, looking at my background, being a physics teacher and all of that, I was more toward quantitative research. And in my first year, I take that philosophy of inquiry with Dr. Wilgemuth. And a total shift happened in that class. I immediately shift from, I tried in all the class, I was focusing on her thoughts and ideas and all of these paradigms and who I am as a researcher. So I started struggling and say I will be a mixed method. And slowly, by the time at the end of this class, at the end of the semester, I decided it will be fully a qualitative research to focus on the story, to tell more. And that's how I went. My research was about using games to enhance science learning. So I focused more about conducting community of practice with science teachers, all high school science teachers, in order, and they all conducted their action research while working to integrating games. The same for what Lisa faced. COVID destroyed everything. So I was in between of doing my research or wait until I don't know when, but I didn't want, to be honest, I didn't want to do it virtually. and all my advisors and my committee members pushing me to do it. Just go, and will give an extra point for your research because it's conducted in unexpected time. So that's what happened. I went there. It was, I wouldn't say a disaster, but all of the data collection period, I was so stressed, so nervous. All of the time, teacher was more talking about the struggle they are facing more than the research questions that we are focusing on the topic that I want them. They said, I cannot really leading them in the discussion. I want the flow to go. So I was totally nervous. I was overwhelmed. I thought I don't have any information. I also did the survey just to have more, not just the interviews, not just the community of practice meetings, which can consider as a focus group, not just our regular meeting and interviews. Let's just do survey. And actually at the end, I didn't get so much from the surveys as much as from the interviews or the meetings that we have it regularly. So sometimes you may think that they are not really giving you the main data, but underlying here and there are a lot of information that was really helpful. So until now, I only know the voices of my teachers. I never saw them. I don't know how they look like. So all the body language, facial expression, I missed all that in my research. I was the only one who was opening the camera. All of them closed the camera all the time. The same when I entered their virtual classes, all the students were closing their cameras and you can only hearing the voices. So it was a struggle, but we survived, Lisa. So
We did survive. We did survive. And that's challenging because ethnography, observation is a big part of ethnography because it adds more than what you can get from just a transcript. So not being able to see your participants or to see the space that you're in or feel the space, you rely on so many different things. But I'm going to let you go ahead, Michelle.
No, this thing is what you are talking so important because I was also facing the same issue, but I read this chapter in the book called Theory as a Methodology, and one of the chapters talk about this, then how we critical scholars, we can use technology to also do critical work. So even though we want to go in person and do this kind of research, but how we can also use, since the world is changing, how we can use technology to do powerful work with our communities, but using the tools that we have now, that's the technology. So so that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And that's very connected to the first question that one of people who sign up, they ask how you connected your conceptual framework. Lisa was talking about intersectionality, about Black feminism, and you, Jawaher, were talking about the class that you took. So how did you connect the theory with your methodology?
Well, you want me to start, Dr. Jawaher?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think Black feminist anthropology and Black feminist thought is very much reflexive. And because of that, it starts with the researcher. So as an ethnographer, you are a key source of the research. So it's coming to you, through you. And so part of that was a self-assessment of my positionality in every way, how I read to the community, because although I'm African-American and I'm studying in the African-American community, I didn't grow up in that community, even though I grew up near it, even though I had family there. So I had to consistently balance my position as an insider and an outsider. I had to navigate how coming in as a Ph.D. student also is from a position of privilege and a different social class for some, that it could make interviewing challenging. So I had to consider how I dressed, how I presented myself at all times. I was lucky because my master's research was also in this community. So I already had very good rapport established in the community, and I had many connects in the community. So it kind of made that part easy. But back to how we connected conceptual frameworks to my methods and things like that. So with that being a leading thought, it also challenges Black feminist thought. Also, it asks you to consider who you're citing, who you're interviewing, and how you analyze that data and how you report the results. So throughout the process, I was very intentional in including women of color, Black women, is people that I cited as sources. So I always sought out their work because they're typically undercited in academia, even though they have available research out there. And historically, Black women are often left out of the narratives of history. So I was very intentional in not only including women as part of the study, but I also asked a lot of questions related to the roles of women in the community. And what I found was that what women said about the same questions and what men said about these questions related to women were often very similar but different. Women elaborated more because they seem to have a more personal relationship with what it means to be a woman. So the men would say, yeah, the women were amazing in the community. And the women would say the same thing, but they would give a lot of detail about what that day looked like, the roles that their mothers played in the community, the roles that they play in the community. And so in the end, it all tied together, but it was a consistent thing from the start of the research. And because my work is also a collaborative ethnography from the start to finish, it involves incorporating the community's perspectives in my research questions, in the analysis of the data, and in the final results. So it's a tedious process, but I think it is very much worth it. So hopefully that answers some questions.
Thank you. No, sure. And you, Jawaher?
So I have the same perspective as Lisa. So for me, my framework was focusing on a tobacco game, which is mostly focusing on the knowledge that teachers need to have in order to integrate games into their teaching practice successfully. So we started at the beginning from my research questions. I focus on how teachers view their roles, which mostly focus on the third level of tobacco game, how also what type of obstacles they encounter while integrating games. I implemented BDs with the teachers before they started implementing the games into their teaching practice. So in this BDs, we focus on each one of these skills that teachers need to obtain. So we focus also, my research question also focused on how this BDs was really helpful for the teacher to gain each skills of these four. And finally, focus on what's the recommendation they would have. So it's mostly in your research question. In my literature view, I go back again to focus on what the literature said and looking at about every integration of games and what was missing in every study after conducting a systematic literature review, looking what was missing and compare that back to my framework. And that helped me actually to create another framework of how teacher can integrate games step by step based on the literature review, based on the framework that I already implemented. And after that, even in the data analysis, I keep back as one of the most important theme. Each one of these scales was one of my themes in my data analysis. And finally, when you're discussing your results, either in chapter 4 or in chapter 5, you will be going back to discuss it from your theoretical framework. So actually, I keep remembering what one of the my committee member told me from the beginning. When I proposed my idea, we haven't even started yet the actual proposal. So she told me, you need to focus on your conceptual framework because this is the foundation of your study. Everything will build based on that. So when you know it, it will be easy to go through all the process. I wasn't understand what she was saying that time. It was totally vague for me. But after that, when I really started, it's become really clear that without it, I will be totally lost. So it's really important for you to know what is the most appropriate framework for your own study. Every study will have a different, maybe, framework. So I keep reading and reading. In the beginning, I couldn't find any framework that focus on games. And I keep back to my committee members and say, there is nothing. So I would use this. And they keep telling me, go and read more. You will find something. You need to enhance your reading about your topic. And I really did. And so always, if you are struggling in the beginning of defining framework, welcome to the reality. We all face it in one step or other. You will find it. Eventually, you will find it, but it will take time. It's not an easy.
I totally agree. No, that's awesome. And the other question is, it's so hard to sit down and code 30 plus transcripts and analyze. Do you have a suggestion to focus on coding and the analysis? How was for you that process of having so much data with you and you don't know what to do?
Should I start or you, Lisa?
You start. You go ahead. You start.
For me, I was totally a crazy person. So I decided that I will transcribe my all data word by word without using any platform. It was beneficial that time because it's give me an idea of my data, but it was so overwhelming. Some of the interviews go more than 2.5 hours. Teacher loved to chit chat and share ideas and experiences and all of that. So it was like, oh my God. And I couldn't go back and change my mind. I already submitted my IRB. I already have everything fixed with this idea. So I need to keep doing it. It was beneficial, but at the same time, it was a disaster. So I wouldn't advise anyone to do it. It's take forever of my life. So, but this is what the first stage for me in analyzing the data. I keep adding some memos while transcribing. So this is give me that idea. This is give me this. Okay. After that, I start the thematic analysis. So it will take a process. It's a long process. It wouldn't finish. So you will keep coding and then recode and then recode. I mostly recoded my data 4 or 5 times because with each interview, you have your fixed code that's coming from your literature, from your framework, from your research question, but sometimes the data is telling you something. So you will keep adding more codes. And as you keep adding, you will come back to the first interview and recoding that. And you keep doing that. So it's a long process. What's really was helpful for me is using MaxQDA. And as a student, you have the benefits of the reducing amount of money for students. So it's really become really cheap. I remember that I paid like $47 or something. So it's worth every little penny. Let me tell you, I love this app. If you don't want to go with the apps with money, there is the Tagit, I believe. It's a Tagit app. It's a totally free, but it wouldn't give you even a quarter of all the criteria and features that other apps will give you, but it's for free. So having the codes with color, all the new codes, I coded them with some color. So I keep back that the code is new. It's also highlighted everything in the text itself with the color. So I keep all of my memos in there. So I keep reminding myself of this is happening, that's happening. So this is mostly, so it's a long process. You cannot shorten it. If you do that, you will maybe lose some of the depth of your data. So take every time, don't rush it. It's really important. Take your time. And this is mostly, I'm doing like 4 or 5 research. It's all qualitative. And in all of them, I keep giving myself the most of my time on data analysis, because this is the depth of your research. This is your data. So give it all the time that it's needed. That's
Thank
mostly
you.
what I'm thinking about. How about you, Lisa?
I took a very similar approach to Jawaher actually with my data, except I knew from my master's that I didn't like transcribing. So I paid for TEMI, which was TEMI, and they have a transcription software, and it would give me back my transcripts in like 5 minutes, no matter how long it was. So it would come back, and it was very affordable in my opinion. I probably paid anywhere from $3 to $10 for a transcript. And what I did, it's also online. You can edit it, and it has timestamps next to the name. So what I did in order to get myself invested in the into the data is I went through to clean the transcripts, because they don't come back completely clean. So that takes probably about as much time as it does to transcribe the data. And while I did that, I would also memo on the side, because it has an area where you could say, you know, whatever it relates to you, or whatever, however you want to connect it. Memoing was my best friend, because that helped me to outline chapters. It helped me to see what was common. But because of the because I was interested in focus, I have a strong love for Zora Neale Hurston. And what I like about her research is that, especially with the book Barcoon, I don't know if you all have had a chance to read it, it's majority the voice of the participant. So I was very interested in following that particular platform. So I had one chapter where I featured 3 of my participants, and then I had a second chapter where I did a typical type, where I take more bits and pieces and basically do a lot more analysis. And I had to do little summary analysis after each featured person. I will tell you that my committee, they loved reading it, but they didn't like it necessary for dissertation, because they wanted it to be more analysis in it. So which is why I had to go back and add the summaries after. But they love the stories, which I love, and I kind of want to keep their voices as they were, kind of unchanged. So I did that, and the coding, like you said, you will code and recode. My ultimate goal was to finish. I wanted to get done with the PhD. It was either, you know, finish or bust. So to me, I knew that I had many things that I could code. And when I came into it thinking about my conceptual frameworks and theoretical frameworks, I couldn't get my brain to calm down and focus on 1 or maybe 2 theories. So I was all over the place. Because of that, my subject matter is rich, and I can pull different themes from my research, but it becomes a tedious process in the end, trying to explain how you connect to this. And unfortunately, my brain allows me to see all these different connections all the time while I'm writing. So I focused on one way of doing, and the additional coding that I did, that will come later as I pull articles from my dissertation research and write more about it and put it in other types of formats and things for the community. So, but yeah, that's how I did it.
That's awesome. And if you have any questions, you can ask, okay? What was the process of the difficulties and that you face with IRB and implementing your methods? Did you face difficulties? How was your process for you?
IRB took me about 2 weeks. What I would recommend is, when you start communicating with the IRB, respond to everything that they ask you to do as quickly as possible and get it back. You want it to get back to them while things are fresh on their mind, while it just touched their hand. And they typically respond back to you just as quick. And always use your manners. You get so much more with sugar. So always say thank you. Always, you know, be as agreeable as you possibly can, but still stand firm on what it is that your research is about, that it's not actually changing the intentions or the purpose of your goal, or misrepresenting the populations that you're studying. So stand firm on it politely. And it usually doesn't take that long. So IRB was actually probably the easiest part, getting to the point where my committee accepted my proposal to move forward to IRB. That's a different story. So.
I would
Thank
agree
you.
with you, Lisa. For me, it's taken me around 3 weeks, even though one of the reviewer left in a vacation and my applications stand there. I sent them a reminder, and people in IRB was very cooperative, very great responding. They immediately respond to every little question that you have. So they are really, really great. I heard a lot of things about them, a lot of bad repetition, but all I faced was really so grateful, so helpful. They were always there. They respond immediately to any question you have. So they were great. So it's not the hardest step, getting your IRB. I would agree with Lisa, the hardest step to make your committee member approve it. So it's go really to the IRB. So I totally agree with you. The process with your committee member is so much harder than the IRB itself.
You might even start by looking at the IRB protocols when you're writing your proposal, because basically that's everything you're going to need. You're typically pulling that information from your proposal, but if you can see what they're going to ask you, it kind of gives you, this is what I need to answer, and this is what I need to include in my proposal.
And it's actually helping also you, Lisa. So I remember in every little details, my committee member keep asking me to add details in each step. What you will do, what you will do. How if COVID, we was in the beginning period of COVID, so we don't know if the classes will be online or face-to-face or what's going on during my proposal. So they are keep telling me, put your plan B if we are still in quarantine because of COVID, what you will do, how you will go through it. And I keep asking myself, why are they making so hard for me? But after that, when I start to applying for IRB, it's all become really clear. You need to know every little details before submitting your IRB, because after that, changing something will be a little bit, it's not impossible, but a long process, a little bit hard. So make sure that everything is clear from the beginning to make your life much easier while you're going through your data.
That's true. I stated probably, I don't know how many different methods that I could potentially use. And that was actually so beneficial to me in the end, because especially what COVID teaches you is that you don't know what the challenges may be. And so to address, so first you have to address, how are you going to navigate this pandemic? So you always go to the top source. So I used whatever the CDC recommendations were, and that's what I followed, whether it was staying 6 feet, whether it was wearing a mask. And that's what I stated as my, is what I would do to deal with that potential risk. And then you have to realize some people are not going to be comfortable with you coming in into their homes. You had all these different ways of talking. So you had to include virtual, you had to include phone, and you had to include face-to-face interviews. And then I had the survey on top of all of those things. And then, you know, so in the end, I probably used a little bit of all of it, but it taught me a lot about flexibility.
Totally. My IRB took 2 months. So
sorry.
yeah. So, and it's totally true. Like the process of writing a proposal until you get to the IRB is another story. That's so when you get to the IRB, you kind of already have your proposal, your IRB written. So so the next question is, do you have any advice for any piece of advice for who is starting now for example, their first research? Do you have like if you have one piece of advice, what advice could you give to a novice doing qualitative research?
I would say I always try to begin with the end in mind, but I stayed open and flexible throughout the entire process. So what that means is every class that I took, I took with the intention that I knew I wanted to study an African-American community. At first, I wasn't sure on which community. Would I return to my master's community? Would I go to a different one? Would it be a comparative analysis? And so I listened to everything. I listened to things about migration. I listened to things about stability. I listened to anything and found a way that no matter what the class was, I wanted to see what did it offer that connects to what I would like to do. And particularly the methods, because if you find a book or something in the readings and you love the way that they did that, you want to make sure that you put it in your EndNotes or your whatever reference software you're using. You want to make sure that you lock it in. You want to know how they did it. You want to get very in depth with that because you'll need that as you write your methods section. But and taking courses on methods. I mean, you can't take enough. I probably have taken, oh my, I can't even, maybe 6 different methods course by the time I got to the end of my PhD coursework. And I'm probably underselling the amount that I actually completed, but it helped me to have a better grasp of what it is that I would want to do. And don't think that you need to know everything from the beginning. Expect that you don't know and that it can and will change, because you'll sit next to someone and they'll tell you it sounds like they have their whole life together when they introduce themselves, and they don't, because most of us don't. We're bringing it together. So you don't have to have it all together. You can go in there as a clean slate, just prepared to learn and prepared to persevere, because that's what it's going to take.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I would agree with Lisa. And also all of these meetings, webinars, creating a community around you, talking about qualitative research, discussing it. I remember that everything, so I'm so fan of her. I will keep adding her name from while to while. So all of you who are still in USF, take the benefits of being surrounded with Dr. Wilgemuth. She's one of the best. She's a great person, and she's always open for any question, for any thoughts, any ideas. And I love the way she discusses it. She make it that easy and manageable that you go through it. She wouldn't tell you the answer, even for your questions. She wouldn't tell you the answer, but she will keep asking you question where you reach the answer yourself and you know it. So keep surrounding yourself with this type of community. I remember since I came to USF until now, each webinar that this institution have, I keep log into it. The first, I wasn't presenting anything. I just hear and look about all the guest speaker they provided us with. And after that, I start to present. And then next year, I keep presenting and also hearing. So all of this is really helpful to make you stronger in qualitative research. If you have the benefits to work with anybody else. So I was so lucky working with my major advisor as an assistant researcher. That was great, helpful for me to lead me step by step. The courses, yes, was totally great. But working with him was a different level. So I know about the courses, all about the thematic coding and all that, and we try one and everything, but wasn't the same as working with somebody who's really strong in this field and know what to do. So keep working, keep comparing our themes, how we organize the data. That's really support me and help me. So try to take the benefits of every little thing that USF offer.
No, I love it about this because that's happened to me too. I first work with my professor and start to build confidence that you are capable of doing that. And more you see that they doing, oh, I can do that too. So that's when you start to, and I think after I start doing this, I just start to, okay, let's do this. Let's try it again. And no, that's awesome.
Even when you hear them struggling with some codes and keep reading it and go back and forth and you working with them, you believe it's not only me who's struggling. They also are struggling. He's
Yes.
a tenor. He's still struggling. So I'm in a good shape. I'm not a little bit weak in this field. So it's also believe that everybody is struggling in a qualitative research, in academia, everyone is struggling. So in each
And that's
research, something, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, go
And
ahead,
this is
Lisa.
connected to the next question that I love these questions. How do you stay accountable to writing progress for your doctoral dissertation when navigating severe mental health challenges?
Oh, yeah.
Counseling. Let's start with counseling. From the first day that you're enrolled and you have access to student counseling, you go and you sign up without shame. You do it like it's a required prerequisite course, and you go to your counseling sessions. It helped me so much. And when I didn't have time to do it and I kind of stepped away from it, I missed it and I had to get back to it. And it helps bring you together, because the PhD process, it takes you away from so much of the world. You kind of isolate yourself and you're so zoned in that because it takes that type of focus in order to finish, that you kind of feel like other things are falling apart around you, and you, which makes you feel out of control at times. But some of the things that I do that I also did to stay accountable is that I had an excellent cohort, and we started out with a great relationship from our first foundations course, and we continued to build it. And so I was fortunate enough that me and one of my cohort members, we completed our quals like within maybe weeks of each other. And so we continued through the dissertation process within everything. We were like weeks of each other. I think we defended maybe 2 weeks apart. That's how close we were in everything. But what that does is it gives you a chance, and we did not have the same advisor. We were not working on the same theme. She was a medical anthropologist and I was a cultural anthropologist, but it gave me someone to talk to things that I was dealing with and just hear me out for a second, let me vent. There's days when we didn't want to work. Both of us were like, that's it, I'm quitting the program. I'm done. I don't even need a doctorate anyway. Why am I here? Who told me that this is what I wanted to do with my life? And so we pushed through and we got a timeline to hold ourselves accountable. So when it came to writing chapters, we had a goal of writing a chapter a week or every 2 weeks. And sometimes you meet it, sometimes you don't, but it gets you in this zone of, I need to get this done by Friday. And if I do, then I can submit this. And, but every advisor is different. And just the more friends you can have, that I'm not going to say the more, because sometimes the more is not the merrier, but just having someone that goes through that process with you, it helps you, because when you're the benefit of coursework is that you have timelines, you have deadlines, you have due dates. After coursework, you're out in the world and you're becoming independent. So no one is really telling you what to do. You have to make sure you can figure out what to do. So you may just sometimes it can be frightening. You're like, okay, am I really ready for this? Maybe I was only ready for the coursework. I don't know that I'm cut out for this PhD gig. But having someone that's doing it with you, having someone to reinforce you when you're down, and you're being able to give that back to them, it keeps you wanting to do better and do more and finish. And we were so excited that we were able to walk across the stage together.
And you, Jawaher?
So I have a similar story, similar and different story as Lisa. For me, I have 2 co-majors. So one was specifically on science education. The other one was more psychiatrist. So he keep focusing on my emotions, on how I feel more than the progress of the work. So he keep texting me, are you okay? Take a break, focus on that, do this. He keep focusing on my emotional health. The other one keep focusing on the progress of the work, what you accomplished, what you done. So both of them created a really good balance to make me in the middle. However, I also have the same as Lisa. One of my friends, she was with me in the same program, teacher ed. We both focused on science education. We both finished up our qual together, then started with writing the proposal. We defend our proposal. She was a week ahead of me, and then I was after her. We start collecting the data together. We met every week in the data collection, telling each other what's going on, how we feel, all the struggles, all the stress, trying to figure out some solution, especially with the COVID situation. It creates another challenge for us to deal with all of that. It was also fun to chit chat with her, to discuss whatever, to release all the stress with somebody who's going through the same phase as what you feel. She knows what's happened with me. It wasn't only helpful while collecting the data, also when I finished up writing, for example, chapter 4, which was the hardest and longest ever. I remember submitting that to my advisor, and then he kept telling me, you need to emphasize more about the differences between these cases. And I didn't know what should I do. So she voluntarily read all of chapter 4 for me. I read all of hers, and we start discussing what we saw in these data that you as a researcher, sometimes because you're so involved with these participants, there are some emotions, some feelings you can't handle that. So you try to really create the best image for your participants, even though nobody will know their names because you use another names, you use some codes, but this is because of your feeling about them. So she starts reading mine, I start reading hers, and keep pointing about, sounds weird because it shouldn't be like this. Here you are trying to be so nice with this participant or whatsoever. It's showing that it's not the reality. You need to emphasize this point. So she keep telling me, I keep telling her what we should change, discussing our data. So more critical friends reading our data, discussing what's going on. The same for chapter 5. And we defend 2 days ahead from each other. So it's what was mostly neck to neck. I still reaching her all the time right now. So having this support was the most thing that made me really survive that period of time, because it's a really struggle. We cannot deny it. It is so stressful, so struggle. Sometimes I saw myself crying without any reason. I don't know why. I remember keep walking around the streets, brushing some airs. It was a so weird period of my life, but we survived. So you all will survive at the end. You will see the light end of the panel. Trust yourself.
I totally agree with you all, and having your support. Like I always say the same thing, having your friend or having someone to be a check on you, and he also take some time for you, go for short walks. What I'm doing now is like during my break, I have my writing time that's from 5 a.m. to midnight to noon. I know that's crazy, but that's how I do. And at 8, when I like at 2 hours after writing, I give a break and I go for a 20 minutes walk, or I listen a podcast that I enjoy, something that's not connected to my research, and taking time for yourself. That's very helpful, because one thing that we see a lot in academia is a lot of people, scholars, having their health impacted by that. So having this balance is very important. So you need to start creating this habit now, because when you are in the future, it's going to be hard. So that's very important, something that I pick always. So take care of your health, take care of your mental health and your emotions, your feelings. And if you want to cry, cry.
That reminds me, Michelle, and one time after finishing chapter 4, I start trying to write chapter 5. I know you are in this phase right now. And I was in a writing block, like I stay all the day in front of the computer trying to even have only one paragraph to finish, and nothing came up. So I was really struggling. I keep reaching my friend Stephanie and telling her what's going on. And after that, my advisor, not the one who's really about my emotion, the other one actually, he told me, you know what you need to do. He know that I have other friends in Philadelphia. who I really love, and all the time I keep telling him I will go there for her. He told me, right now, pick up a ticket and go to Philly. Go to see your friend, take 2 days with her without seeing your computer, without working, and come back. Everything will come slowly with you. Don't try to struggle yourself to write something. You wouldn't be able to do it. Just take a break. So sometimes taking a break, it's not wasting a time. It's really giving yourself the break to really enhance your motivation to work more. So absolutely focus on these little details. It's really important to have this.
Oh, I think Lisa frozen.
Oh.
Between learning.
Again, Lisa.
So, yes.
Could you repeat?
But I said that's
think
called, it's me. I was like, can you hear me?
Yes. Right now we can hear you.
Okay, I was saying that's called spacing. So taking the information and then back away from it, you get so much more sometimes by taking 2 days off than if you would have sat in front of that computer for another 48 hours. So it's sometimes you just have to, and have fun where you don't think about it, just enjoy yourself, whatever that means for you, as long as you're safe. But, and comb your hair, take care of your hair. Because listen, I gave up on my hair during the PhD process and it felt like it was so gray and so thin. So just little things that you don't realize that you've just given up, because you're surrounded by people who are of a particular type of personality that they can go into tunnels and focus with you. So you don't have really the peers to pull you out sometimes. So you have to have the strength to be able to back up, take some time with families and friends who are just, the people that you normally would hang with before PhD, just to get you grounded for a minute and then come back to it.
Your mind will keep going back there, but try to shut it down as much as you can. Because I remember my mind keep going back to my dissertation and what's could happen, what can I do, and all of that. But I try to shut it down. No, I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't go there.
Yeah, create your boundaries. Like that's my time, and that's the time with my family. That's my time to eat, drink water too. And I don't know if someone want to ask a question. Maybe it's a time for someone who is watching us, or if they want to ask any question, or I can keep asking the questions that people wrote.
But I think you have a hand raised. Oh, no, you don't.
Oh,
that's my, you don't. That was me.
No way. No, okay. While they think about the questions, the question here is talking about how did you synthesize, because you have so much data. You have so much data and you don't know how to organize this data and make decisions. What should I put in my dissertation? So how did you do that? How you have a lot of data and you have to make a decision, what I'm going to put there. I can use this now and put my dissertation, but I also can use this for my future publications. So how did you approach this situation? Because it's actually something that I'm facing now. I have all this data that I want to share with everybody, but I know I am going over on my committee. So
I think for me, going back after I completed my research and I started, I was submitting my interviews for transcription services while I was doing my research. So it gave me a little bit more time for analysis in my timeline. And so when I didn't have interviews to do, I would take time and I would go through the interviews, cleaning them up and trying to think about how they fit into the themes of my research. And but by the time I collected all the interviews, I went back and I reread my first 3 chapters, or your information from your qualitative exams or comprehensive exams, to refresh myself on why I was there. Because sometimes you get at some point you're submerged, and then some point you're so in it till you can't see the forest for the trees. And it's a stepping back, coming in in order to synthesize, go back to what brought you there and then come back to where you are. And it helps you tell the stories. It reminds you how these stories have been told before. And it also it highlights where there's a gap, because you know what you have in your data and what you didn't see, or what, why you were recording in the first place. So that kind of helped me, just going back and reading my literature review, reading my methods. It helped me to deal with my own data.
I actually use a similar approach as Lisa, and keep in your mind your research question, what your research giving, that it's totally unique than all other researchers that have done in your field. And if there is really something surprising, some information that's really unexpected happened, and it's always happening, especially with the qualitative research, this is really important to add in your result and in your discussion, because it's something unique that's really make your research in a different level.
Thank you so much. So the next question is, I'm having trouble writing my methodology. Did you struggle writing my methodology? And how did you do that? How you organize, and how you made the decisions that you made to, but did you struggle to write your methodology?
Welcome to qualitative research world.
Oh God, I think the methodology was probably the easiest for me. What I didn't like was the literature review, but methodologies came easy.
So for me, it was a little bit hard. The only thing that was really hard is defining my design. So I know it's a case study. In the beginning, I thought it's a multiple case study because they are totally different for different teacher and all of that. But in my proposal defense, we discussed it, and all the committee member believe that it's not, they wouldn't tell you what is the most appropriate design. So I keep reading and reading and reading and cannot find a specific, I don't believe it's a single case, but I agree with them, it's not a multiple case. So what is this? I keep reading in case study until I find the perfect match to my research. And it was an embedded case study where you have different cases, but it's all having the same criteria, which can be considered as a single, but it's not a single. So this was the hardest thing for me in chapter 3. All other things was really going really wonderfully, gratefully. Only this part was the hardest.
I knew I wanted to do ethnographic research. I was clear on that. Then I took this oral history methods class, and I was like, I love oral history because I like the way that they just transfer the story that you've heard into a story that is written. And I was like, I think I want to do this. So my advisor said, I thought you like ethnography. So I was like, I do. So she was like, okay, so you're doing ethnography. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm doing ethnography. She's like, well, I think collaborative ethnography is great. So I had to learn what collaborative ethnography was. And then I employed that method. And then at the end, she was like, well, why did you choose to do collaborative ethnography? And I was like, because that's what you suggested to me. So there's a lot of back and forth, and you're going to experience that throughout the process, where you think that you've done something because they've asked you, and then 2 months later, they're like, why did you do that? That's a lot of work. So, but it was fun.
Yeah, I want to add something, at least with me, what I feel is I'm very into, my research is very grounded on my theoretical framework. So my research is connected to critical theory. So I had to read a lot about how critical theories conduct research, and I struggle, and I'm still struggling to write my methodology chapter because I'm doing a research in 3 languages. So how I'm gonna make my decisions, how I reach the Haitian community, how I reach the Brazilian community, how I reach the Hispanic community. So I had to be conscious and critical about my own actions as a researcher and make my decisions about my methodology, or why I'm making sure that their voices are being portrayed, and how it's connected, and all this is connected to my framework, that the colonial, that critical theory, So that's a little bit about my own research, but that's another thing. One day I really want to create a webinar about conducting research in different languages. So because that's another conversation, but that's a little bit of I'm sharing so about the decision. So sorry if I'm talking too much here. I was not supposed to be talking.
Absolutely.
But I just want to share.
So collaborative,
So
Miriam asked a question in the chat about narrative ethnography. And I'm not sure
yeah.
exactly what narrative ethnography is, but what collaborative ethnography is, it is a design where you are expected to collaborate with your participants as intellectual contributors. So they're not just participants, their work is seen as part of the intellectual thought. And so you're bringing their thought into the canon with almost minimal to no, I'm not going to say to no, because you're going to have to do some analysis, but very minimal analysis, but you're going to combine and explore how that connects with theoretical, and you're training the community at the same time on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you're allowing them to have an opinion in it. That means that you're going to meet with your participants at a minimum twice. I met with my participants, many of them like 3 and 4 times, but it just depends on if you have key collaborators or if you take everyone as a intellectual contributor, because some people will understand what was going on more in that time. So that's what it is. But I'm not sure what narrative ethnography is, but ethnography in general deals a lot with participant narratives. So you do tell a lot of the story. Your quotes are probably a lot longer or a lot more frequent than some other research methods, because the idea of ethnography is that you're the tool to empower the voices of the participants. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it did.
It's just like it's like at least what I'm doing is like your participants are not passive, they are active. They are there to share their stories, their voice, and they are not just being participants, but they are there to speak up, kind of, right?
Exactly. I'm seeking knowledge from them. So I don't come in as the all-knowing, person who, even though I've done a lot of research on African American history, I've done a lot of research related to segregated spaces, I'm trying to learn about the community where they are the experts. And so in that, my interviews are very few in words to where I'm actually talking, and very extensive. If you look at my transcripts, I say this and my participants say this. And that was the other thing, I think we talked about it the other day, is that we had very long interviews because people had been isolated so long from COVID. They catch you in the house and you're there to stay, so you have to get comfortable. So, but yes, I went back. I found that my participants didn't like reading their transcripts in the raw. So when I converted them to stories, they would tell me, I don't like this. So they get to say, I don't like this part, I don't like that part. That's some people were asking about how do you pick the information that you choose for your data? Because in a collaborative ethnography, I do that with my participants. We're going to put this in. Do you have any problems with this? Do you want that there? Do you want it? Would you like to emphasize this more or that more? So all of that was with them.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Please feel free to ask your questions. People are shy. So,
but I will tell you this: I don't recommend collaborative ethnography if you're trying to get done with your research timely, because if you say that's what you're doing, you are required to, because you're going to be asked, how did you collaborate? What was your collaborative piece? And if you don't have the time for that, it may not be the most ideal approach. But if you do it, it can be very rewarding.
Good. And how was your time management? How did you organize the time during the process of conducting your research?
I thought my interviews would be 45 minutes. That's what I said in the IRB. And and I had about 100 possible interview questions. And a lot of times when you're researching in community research, you're talking about a subject that not only you love, but the people love. They like talking about themselves. They like talking about their history. So you want to consider the fatigue of your participants. You don't want them to get tired. But I found that I was the one suffering from fatigue because I couldn't get them to wrap it up. They wanted to take a break. They were like, well, do you want something to eat? They would tell me, pause my tape for a minute, and then they would come back. Okay, go ahead and turn your tape back on. So sometimes I spent hours, 3 and 4 hours with one participant. So I typically dedicated a day. So if I agreed that I was going to do interview on a particular day with someone, I made myself available for them that entire day.
Do you have any comments, Jawaher?
So it's the same. Some people are really chatty, so they will share, they will tell you a lot, and others wouldn't be giving you enough information. So you need to keep adding up some questions to reach and to enhance your data. So you mostly will work with the two type. I worked with both of them. Some of them I anticipated that the interview will take maximum the same as Lisa, 45 minutes, and they go out to 2.5 hours talking, and they keep talking and love to share the ideas. Others, it's mostly 30 minutes and it's done, even though you're trying to have more information from them, but it's not their personality. They don't love to share that much. And that will remind me that everyone you need to have. So for example, let's say that in my plan, I only want 4 participants in my study. Add more, because you don't know with the withdrawal, for example, or if somebody is not really chit-chatting and not give you enough data, and especially in a qualitative research, their sharing is your data, is your information. So if you don't have it, what you will deal with. So always have more participants. It's mostly beneficial than the appropriate amount that you have in your mind, because you don't know what will happen.
And totally agree. Oh, sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
I'm reading the chat room again. So Miriam asked, what method did we use to get participants for our study? So I used a lot of snowball sampling, but what I would say is, if you know the community that you're going to be doing your research in, make yourself a regular in that community so that you're a familiar face. And every chance you get every time you get an opportunity, you let them know, I'll be here soon because I plan to do my research in this community. Tell them what you're going to do so that they can spread the word. Some people really, really love to talk about the same things that we love to talk about, but you just need one good source who's connected, and they will connect you. And then because of COVID, it limited the way that I could initially reach participants, because before I was in the community, but COVID had all these restrictions. So a lot of the places where I could frequent, I couldn't go anymore. So I used to go to a civic association meeting. They canceled it because a lot of the members were elderly. And if they went virtual, I didn't know where they were. And then there was a restaurant that I went, but because of social distancing, it wasn't as easy to start conversations. So I started with the survey, and I posted a flyer that advertised the survey and the option to be interviewed or participate in focus groups at the same time. And I did that because someone else in our program had used that method. And in 2 days, they had like 99 participants. But what I didn't know is that she had already actively created a community related to her research on social media prior to starting her study. So when she submitted the flyer, people have been waiting on it. So if you can get people hungry for what you have to give, you're going to get participants in an instant. So just bring it up in conversation all the time.
I totally agree with that. And also you put more participants, so you don't need to go through IRB and change again. They're gonna just go to have to, so put more numbers there so you don't need to go through that. Just avoid
Yes.
So, Jawaher, I don't know if Jawaher, you want something to say or?
So for me, I reached my participants. I first was in every year, I was focusing more in high school science teacher. So in every year, I come back in the summer to KSA, and I always give workshops voluntarily with the Ministry of Education in here in the area of Eastern region. So science teacher become more familiar with me, with who I am, with all of that. The year before my dissertation, I announced that I will be doing a study about digital game-based learning and all of that. So if any of you are interested, this is the link for Google form. Please share it to every science teacher you know. I also reach the school district in here, and I give them the flyer. I give them the Google form, and I define the criteria that what type of teachers I want to take. So it was only female teacher due to the culture in Saudi Arabia. So they wouldn't be more comfortable if we have both genders. They wouldn't open up enough. So it's really important also to understand the community around you. It will really help you to reach the participants or to select them appropriately. I select that no more than 3 years, no less than 3 years of teaching experience, because I want them to be familiar with all of the classroom environment, the issue with science education in Saudi Arabia, the curriculum itself. I want them to be more comfortable with all of this before trying something new and add a new level to their stress. However, COVID came, they shift to e-learning. So something came up, but I was trying to define my criteria, define what I want, what's specifically most appropriate for me. And I only needed like 4 participants, but I reached 7 in the beginning. We started with 7 teachers. The teacher who already registered in the Google form was more than 40, but the majority of them wasn't either maybe not high school teacher, or they don't have 3 years of teaching experience, or they don't have a really background in science education that much. So they haven't graduated from science education department, so it will be hard to work with. So it's easy to reaching participants. It's not that hard enough if you're planning ahead for it. Don't start with it in the last minute when you already want to implement your data. I know that you don't need to specify who are your participants until you finished your IRB, but start early to just make an advertisement maybe for your research, your ideas, the community that you want to be surrounding in, to help you reach the participants.
Yeah, I do want to add to that. I remember I was on this oral history project. If I would have thought about this with my dissertation, it might have made my life a lot easier when COVID came, but I didn't expect COVID. And what she did was she talked about the research prior at another event where the community was present, and she created a list. And if you think you would be interested in participating in this study, she had a contact list. So when the time that the project rolled out, we worked from that list, and we were like, hey, you signed up to be interviewed at this time. Are you still willing to conduct that interview? And when would you be available? And a whole book project was created from that mode of setting up for participants. So anything you can think of to keep people at bay, if you have people that you think are good for your study and you meet them, get their contacts immediately.
Yeah, we have another question here. How similar was your actual dissertation methodology to how it was conceptualizing your proposal? The methodology changed completely, but that's another story. Go ahead.
I think because I had like 650 different methods listed in my proposal, I was able to just cut off the fat in the end. I really, really had hoped that I would have focus groups. So I talked a lot about that in my proposal, how these different focus groups would work, but that was because I anticipated access to the Civic Association. I didn't have that access. I could have gone virtual because I did have the skill set to do virtual focus groups, but I didn't already have their contact information. So I could have done those things ahead, and I probably would have been able to do it. But what did become my observation when I had to go online was how people engage with the flyer online, and where did I post it. And I would ask a question sometimes on my Facebook, and I'll be like, hey, who remembers the guy who drove the fruit truck in that particular area? And people from that community would get on and they would say, oh, that was so-and-so. No, it was him. So it was just different ways of keeping the community aware that I'm talking about your neighborhood. I'm talking about your home. What do you have to say? And it would people loved it because they got a chance to see how my community engaged and the fact that some of them were there. But I wanted it to go from the people I knew into people that were outside of my Facebook contacts. So I had to get into their different spaces, and some of them I got access to and some of them I didn't. So I would say it was similar to what I proposed, but a lot was cut off.
I have
Yes,
a different story. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
No. Joa, she can. I can ask her the next question.
So I have a similar story, but it's in another path. So for me, it was a little bit, I added more stuff. I changed some stuff. I add more stuff, but in general, it's not so different. Because mostly in your proposal, it's dependent on your committee members, absolutely. But mostly you wouldn't reach the approval to doing a proposal until they make sure that everything is okay to go for it. Your advisor wouldn't allow you to go through a proposal if you are not ready 100% for proposal. So I mostly entered my proposal knowing that it will be approved, that I should start immediately with IRB just immediately after the proposal defense date. But a lot of things also changed because everyone in your committee member want to add their personalities, their thoughts, their ideas. And that's why you select them from the first place, to make your research so much stronger. So you will have different personality, different thoughts, different ideas. So try to have as much as you can committee members who get along to each other, who have the same thoughts, the same approach. That will make your life much, much easier.
Yes. And I also remember, like at least in my case, I had to have a permission, the school. So the school didn't give me permission. So I had to find out different ways. So just be conscious that sometimes when you work with community, sometimes you depend on them. So you need to make sure that maybe they're gonna say no for you, even though you have all this goal, but sometimes you're gonna have to figure out another way. So just be ready for those cases, because that's what happened to me. That's how. But it was amazing. I learned so much through the process.
Yeah, I have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and a plan E, and one of them will work. And that's it. But your methods becomes your easiest chapter to write because you're just telling them what you did in the end.
Yeah, and one thing that you two kind of talk. One thing that I learned in Brazil, that the first time I did ethnography in Brazil, my research participants told me, "I'm tired of researchers who come here to do research with us, but they never come back to tell us what they did, or they just come here to get the data." So since that day, I learned what kind of researcher I don't want to be. Is my responsibility of the community I am conducting the research. I'm conducting the research about them, I'm talking about their experiences, about their stories. So I need to be conscious how I write about them, and also make conscious that I'm not just there to collect data, but how can I be a volunteer in a community, or how I can help the community, or how I can, I just want to go there and get the information, leave and finish. No, how you can also use that's the very important. That's very important to me. Is like your ethics as a researcher. So how you collect and how you connect, because when you're talking about culture, when you're talking about people's stories, you need to understand that sometimes is based on their ancestrality, or is based on their commodity, is based on the elderly or whatever. So you need to be conscious that how you approach them and how you behave during the data. So that's something that is very important for me, and it's very connected to your ethics as a researcher. So I just want to make sure that here. So I think we are almost not, we only have 4 more minutes. So I don't know if someone want to have a question, or they want to share what they thought about the conversation, if they want to.
I actually have a question. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
So, excuse my tardiness. It's been a crazy day. I noticed most of the participants here are PhD students. I am not. I am an MBA student, but I am interested in furthering my education in agriculture education and technology. So I was recommended to join this chat and kind of like absorb as much information as possible. And I'm not sure if you all touched on this, but how far in advance and before you had your advisors and whatnot, did you know your dissertation, like what you will be writing, how you'll be doing your research? Did you kind of gather all of that during your first 2 years of the program, or was it kind of were you kind of like me, where I'm here in my first year of my MBA and I'm like, what am I going to write about? Who am I going to research with? What's going to happen? So can you tell me your experience in that shortly? Thank you.
I think my experience was I had solidified what I would be writing about within the first year of my PhD program. I had an idea, a general idea, but I solidified it within the first year, and I would recommend most people have an idea by that end of your first year in the PhD.
So for me, I selected actually USF because I know that it's provided the type, or working on the type of research that I'm interested in. So I know what I want my research to be from the beginning. I knew the idea. My first year shifting me from quant to qual to change a little bit of methodology, but the content itself is the same. However, I saw a lot of my colleagues and my friends who finished the second year or almost done from the second year without knowing what they want to focus on. So you have both types. I would highly recommend you to enter with knowing what you want to do. So every little course you are taking, it's toward helping you really going through your dissertation and supporting you reaching your goals. Every little course, every conference, everything will be supporting and adding. But some people are not having this blessing, so they are trying to figure out while they are taking the courses. So in this time, you will take longer in the dissertation. It will take you longer to finish your PhD, but both, I saw both.
Mm-hmm. I was once advised to do a PhD in something that you absolutely love. Absolutely. Because then you are drawn to that information, you are drawn to that in the classes. As soon as you hear it, it clicks with you. You may not know exactly what you're going to do it, but do it for something you love. Plus, the work is so tedious. If you're not loving it, the PhD will drive you insane. And that's the real deal with it.
It's about reading, Lisa. If you are not loving the topic itself, how you will spend all the hours reading every little research about this topic, looking around books and everything. If you are not interested in the first place, it's not really grabbing your attention, and you start enjoying yourself while reading the literature. It's become something fun. For maybe at the end you become tedious and dislike it, but at the beginning, at the early stages, you enjoy reading the literature was fun for me. I remember enjoying that. After a while, I get fatigued. Everybody can take that, but it was really fun for me to learn anything new about the topic, anything related to my topic. I was amazed and really interested to hear. So this is something to really know what path you should take.
It was a love-hate relationship for me. I loved every minute of it, and I dropped out every single week. Every week, I was like, this is it. I'm done with this program. It's over. This is it. And I was like, oh my God. And I could eat it up all. We just realized that we were really sick people at the end of the
A lot of
day.
time, it's not good enough to give Ph.D. It's not my place to do it. Why I'm doing this to myself? So this is reality. Everybody feel it. Don't worry about it.
And Joe, I think also I think about myself during my master's and now my PhD. I think I had to go through phases during my life to change who I am. I changed a lot during my master's to my PhD. And I'm very proud of the research that I am conducting because of my master's and of these things that happen in your life. So be okay with changes, and you are going to change so much through this process. And just like they said, be strategic, go to conference, don't just be like taking class and go home. How you can maybe work with your professor, or maybe you can go to the conferences and go every paper that you write for a class, submit a proposal for a conference so you can present it. And actually the SOQM now has a call for proposals, so you can already submit your paper for a symposium, so you can start exposing yourself about the different alternatives that you have, and that's how you're going to learn, and that's how you become more confident and see the different methodologies, the different things you can do with your research, with your passions, and definitely choose something that you are passionate about.
And Joy, I would also add to that, I'm actually piggybacking off of Jawaher, is research the professors. See if they have the research that you're interested in with the focus that interests you, because that's how you choose your university. And then if you think that their topics are related, you need to ask the students, what is their experience with their professors? How quickly do they respond to emails? How much advice did they give you along the way? And know what you expect from an advisor, because if you go in there with the expectation that your advisor is going to hold your hand, you could be grossly disappointed. So find out what the type of person is that because just because their interest is similar to yours, it doesn't necessarily mean that will be the best fit. So definitely research your program before you go into it, but go into it very open and ready to learn.
Thank you for that. My friends probably think I'm crazy because I already have talked to about 5 professors.
Not crazy at all.
I just started my second semester, so I'm just trying to like get ahead of the game. And yeah, I appreciate you all sharing your stories. This actually helps a lot with kind of like, I guess, the mental part of it for me. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
We are here to support you. If you need anything, just let us know. So we already passed the time. So the last question is, if you have one piece of advice to give it to who are here, something that you didn't know before that you wish someone could have told you, what is this advice? This piece of advice?
That's really a hard question.
It's hard because we told you a lot of the things that we would have done. Like the conferences are great. I believe when you go to a conference, try to present. The first conference, go to learn styles of how people present. The next one, present. That's how you build networks. Build your networks out and find mentors ASAP, inside your field and outside of your field. They're priceless. 5 minutes can change your life with a very good mentor. 5 minutes and you are on your way.
I totally agree. And actually what happened with me was totally different. So I don't want to mention that, but don't always hear what people said. Sometimes it's really good to have advice from others, especially if you are looking for advisor or whatever. But sometimes they are not having a good experience with this person or that person. And when you walk through it, you saw a total different experience. It's life-changing for me, being with someone, maybe others don't believe in this person or whatever. It was a life-changing experience for me. It's lead me to be more confident, to believe in myself as a researcher, to open a lot of doors for me. So always go also with your guts. and believe that everything could be good for you. You don't know. Don't make any judgment based on somebody else's experience. Everyone is unique, and we all have a different life, different experience, different background. It's the same with your relationship with your advisor, with your committee members. So be open to
And professors do develop. They develop. So what she's saying is true. A person that was terrible to some may have learned from those mistakes, because professors also have mentors. And as they have career mentors, and they get better. Some of them really get better with time. Not all, but some.
I agree.
So thank you, everyone. This was an amazing conversation. I really appreciate everybody here and all the questions and your time, Dr. Lisa Armstrong and Dr. Jawaher Alsuntan, and from Saudi Arabia. So thank you. I know it's so late now in Saudi Arabia. So thank you so much. And we are going to have a call for proposals. I'm going to send you all an email with the call for proposals, and also with the next webinar that's about data analysis. And we already touched a little bit here, but there we are going to focus specifically on data analysis. And thank you so much for sharing your process. This is so valuable. And thank you so much with all my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The same. Thank you all for having me.
Do we stay connected on this call for data analysis? Absolutely not.
Data analysis will be the next, yes, will be the next month.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.